Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Guide Adventures. My name is Guy and today we are modifying the map of Lumley Castle. Now, as I've mentioned before in the other videos, this is not a one-way street. When you are designing a mystery, especially a murder mystery, you are going backwards and forwards between all of the different components. So, for example, I have already started to write the actual GM notes, which I'm using dungeonfog.com, by the way, link down below. And in the GM notes section, you can see that I have already started to write out the adventure. And it's getting longer and longer and longer as we start to add in all of the witnesses and things like that. But it has allowed me to work out a few critical details. Now, if we go back to the map, a murder mystery, specifically a murder mystery, it has to have flaws. It has to have moments that don't sit well or that don't make sense or that are a little bit unusual. Because if it doesn't, the players and the PCs have nothing to hook onto. If it is the perfect murder, which is entirely possible, then there is no ways for the players to solve it. We also have another layer on top of this. In D&D, there is a lot of different ways of communicating with the dead. So we have to make sure that whatever we do somehow removes the dead component from the game. We also need to prevent whatever or whomever is being assassinated from being assassinated and being able to be brought back to life with resurrection spells, especially if we are assassinating a king. It does make it very, very easy for the High Vizier just to wave their hand and say, right, well, you're back. Well done, welcome back, your sire. In which case, has murder really occurred, or is it really just a financial expense and a time incommode that has sort of really happened? Anyway, we need to take all of that into account. So, as I have started to plan out the adventure, this is where we currently sit. This is the original map of Castle Lumley. There are a few things that we don't need. This entire exterior quad, for example, here, we don't need this space. These are currently guest rooms now. They used to be stable yards and the servants' quarters. We might leave them in. But we certainly don't need this structure out here. So I can get rid of all of that kind of stuff, which I'll do in a little bit. In terms of the actual murder, well, this is the basement/ground floor of the castle. None of this stuff is important, except that the king is given cold bathwater. And so what that precipitates is that we must have a chamber on the ground floor where the bathwater is heated. And there already is some hinting here of the public baths type of thing that's going on. That's not where the king would bathe. Now, I'm keeping the mystery vague because that's what we'll deal in next week's episode. But I need a chamber where the water is heated, and that this chamber requires whomever is going there to also go past, arguably, the kitchens or the stores. So that means I need to change up these rooms here. These little rooms would be perfect for it. So instead of it being a torture chamber, which I really don't need it to be, I can turn this into a kitchen, and then I can turn this into a heating room. The benefit of this also is that any heat generated here could be piped in under the floor of the ballroom, keeping the dancers nice and warm in winter, thanks to the Romans and their trepidarium design for that. Anyway, that's an aside. I also need to change up where everybody is sleeping. You can see that here is where the main food will be happening. Here is where the main sort of entertainment, partying stuff will happen. Here we have some of those frustrating dead-end corridors that I was talking about. And we've got some other chambers, things happening on here. I'm not convinced that we need to take it to the 3rd level, although we certainly could. It might buy us some time, actually, to commit our murder in. The proposed king's room is here. We might change that up a little bit. I just need people to have to walk down some stairs, past some witnesses, and go down to fetch some hot water, where they can meet some gamblers or find some cheese. More on that next week. So in general, there's not a huge amount of stuff that I have to do to update this map. There are some other chambers which we can adjust. This map has a lot of blank spaces just because it was originally designed to help guests navigate their way around the actual castle. I would say that this map is about 80% accurate of the original structure, but that it will do 100% of what we need it to do. Now all I need to do is just make these updates, and then I'm pretty golden. Okay, so I have now made all of the adjustments that I need. As you will see next week, the murder takes place in this bathroom here, which needed to have a secret door and into a linen cupboard, but it also required fundamentally that the guards of the king need to leave this chamber, wander all the way down this corridor, down past the steps, or down through the steps, I should say, to the level below. And that brings them out into this space here, and then they have to wander all the way through this way, through here, past the trees, past the gambling table, to then get to here, which is the heating room right next to the kitchens. And there should be a wedge of cheese on this barrel, which is very, very important to the murder. Meanwhile, the kitchen staff need to be able to go up these stairs here to get up to this level so that they can feed folks and do all the necessary things whilst a ball is happening here. Furthermore, there needed to be a bedchamber for the prince, who was unfortunately very, very ill. Not the prince, the lordling. And his bedroom needed to be as far away as possible from the main party area, which was, of course, over here. And it will all become very, very clear when I look at the adventure next week. Next week, we finish the adventure, and then it becomes available to all of the patrons. Until next week, however, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of the patrons who keep the lights on, and to you for watching this video. Until next week, happy adventure creation!